Today I'm going to talk about TIP, T-I-P, and that doesn't mean what you think it does. But before we get into today's topic, I want to talk to you about the Food Truck Owners Expo in Houston, Texas this year, July 29th and 30th. I'm going to be speaking on Monday, giving a class on your menu and how to make a profitable menu. Then on Tuesday, I'm going to give a class on what kind of marketing you should do in the off season. And then all day Monday after the class and all day Tuesday after the class, I'm going to be available out on the floor for you guys to sit down and join me around a campfire, and we're going to talk all about food trucks. You can ask me questions, or you can just listen to me talk about the different subject I got to discuss. Again, all about food trucks. July 29th and 30th this year in Houston, Texas. Go to FTOexpo.com, order your tickets now, and use the code FTTG15, and that will get you a 15% discount on those tickets. Welcome to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. My name is Bill Moore. I am a food truck business coach, author of 5 food truck vending books, including Food Truck 101 and Food Truck 201. This podcast is all about helping you start and grow your food truck business. Want to know the secret to boosting sales and growing a crowd of loyal customers? It's marketing. Learn how to create a powerful marketing plan with the Food Truck Marketing Guide from Table Needs. Get your copy today. The link is in the description below. So what does TIP stand for, or TIP? And it has nothing to do with to ensure prompt service, because that's also a myth. But TIP in this particular case stands for Truth in Profit. That was something that we did at Rax Restaurants. It was a program they had to ensure that the accounting that was done at the store level matched the accounting that was done at the corporate level, because what was done at the corporate level was the official profit and loss statement for the restaurant. If you remember, they taught us how to do the profit and loss statement in Rax Restaurants all the way down to the bottom line, the very bottom line. So if we owned it, we would know exactly how much money we made or how much money we would lose. So I spent a number of years doing those profit and loss statements. But the Truth in Profit program was something that they came up with to make sure that the restaurant managers took their numbers seriously. So every Monday we would be on a phone call with our district manager, and we would be giving them a report on how the store performed the week before. We would talk about sales, we would talk about discounts, we would talk about food costs, we would talk about labor and paper, and then all the other things that were on the P&L. We would have to go through each of those line by line, and then talk about if it was to the goal, if it was not to the goal, and what we were going to do if it wasn't at the goal. And then we would do that again the next week, and then the next week, and of course the fourth week of the month. So we did that every single week. Once a month, the office would do its profit and loss statement, and it would take it all the way down from the top line sales all the way down to how much money that particular store made. Now, what they would do then would be to compare our weekly numbers that we would be turning in and see how those all added up, and it should match what the office was computing. If it did match, you got a bonus. If it matched and was under a goal, you got a really big bonus. So there was money to be made if you just paid attention to doing your own profit and loss statement, and then you can make more money by making sure you hit the goals that were established in the business plan that we did every 6 months at Rax Restaurants. So I learned very early on not only how to do a business plan and how to do a profit and loss statement, but I learned the importance of those things as it pertained to the restaurant itself, and then to me personally, because I got a bonus if I hit the numbers the way I said I would. So this Truth in Profit, what they did was they measured it in percentages, because obviously stores that had higher volume, their numbers start out bigger. So it was never number to number. It was always percentages and things that kept the playing field level. So if your food cost goal, and back then when I worked at Rax Restaurants, it was 32%. Listen to what I say, 32%, not 33 like the people are saying, yeah, 3 times cost. That's 33%. In 1978, 79, 80, and 81, our food cost goal was 32%. And then early on in 1981, when we started having the minimum wage go up every year, our prices went up, but our food costs came down. The reason the food costs came down is because the minimum wage increases didn't impact the people that were doing the deliveries and doing the other things that pertain to the food. It was a feel-good measure to make people think that, yes, the government cares about the little guy. No. The government doesn't care about the little guy. The government wants your vote so they can stay in office. So the minimum wage went up, and what did every business do? raise prices. So because we raised prices and there wasn't a corresponding increase in food prices, that meant our food cost went down. So a 32% food cost was our goal. If we turned in a 32.2, we're a little bit over goal, so we don't get a bonus on that. But if the home office said, yes, they really did run a 32.2, we got a little bit of a bonus because at least our numbers were honest. That's the truth of the truth and profit. Now, you couldn't stay above the goal very long because they would find somebody else to run the restaurant, but they would at least give you a little bit of a pat on the back for being good on accounting. So every Monday, again, we would have to talk to our boss. We're talking about food costs, talking about labor costs. Now, what some bad managers figured out was I get yelled at if I don't hit my numbers. So I know what I'll do. I'll just lie about them. So the district manager would call up and say, hey, what was your food cost? It was 31.9. Awesome job. What was your labor? Total labor was 25%. Awesome job. Now, you just heard me say that the food cost goal back then was 32%, so this manager was slightly under. Good job. Our total labor back then, including management and hourly labor, was about 26%. So this manager just said they were about 1% under. Another good job. And if they repeated that week after week, they'd just be getting all the accolades from the DM. Now, when the office figured it, and if it didn't match, you were in trouble. But you put off being yelled at for 3 weeks. If you were off a lot, you would have somebody coming down that was from the corporate office that you never wanted to see. He was an auditor, and he was exactly the caricature of an auditor you would see on a movie. He all but twirled his mustache when he would come into your store. I'm here to do an audit. Oh, great. Now, if he said, I'm here to do a food audit, you knew there was a problem because he came around once a quarter and would do a cash audit where he would count your drawers and he would count the safe to make sure that all the money that's supposed to be in the restaurant's in the restaurant at that point. And if it wasn't, you'd get a big long report and have to explain why there was a discrepancy. And they would do what they called exposure. And the exposure was taking, if you were off a nickel today, they would multiply that by the number of days in the week, number of weeks in a year, and all that kind of nonsense, and take that nickel and turn it into $10,000 is what you're going to be off this year. So seeing the auditor was not a fun thing. But if he came in and said, I'm here to do a food audit, you knew there was a problem with your P&L. That what you turned in and what the office said are two different numbers, and they're off enough they sent somebody down to check up on you. Now, the only thing it could save you was that the office said your food cost was lower than what you turned in. But if it was the other way around, that your food cost was higher than what you turned in, there was a problem. Now, the difference being, if the office had you with a lower food cost, that means you made a mathematical error somewhere. That's a teaching moment. We can teach you how to run your numbers and get them correct. But when it's the other way, that means you're most likely cheating. You're padding your inventory. You're doing something that is not right. And the auditor's there to figure out what that thing is. So seeing the auditor show up was never a good thing. First thing he would do would be to count your inventory, and he would count everything. And then as soon as he got done with the inventory, he would run a sales report to see exactly what you said you sold, and he would compare his inventory to your ending of month inventory. And if there was a discrepancy that they could not figure out, you could be in big trouble. Now, how do I know this? I worked in Ironton, Ohio. I worked there as an assistant manager, and the store manager decided he was going to start cheating on the numbers. As I would take my inventory, because I would do the inventory on Sunday night, leave it on the desk for him the next morning, and he would go back in and change numbers. But see, I knew how to do the entire P&L. He didn't know that I knew how to do the entire P&L. When he started changing my numbers, my count, to make the inventory appear to have more on hand, I would go, there's no way that I missed $1,000 worth of food. I might miss 10, but I did not miss 1,000. So I'd go through and look, what's the difference? What's the difference? What's the difference? And I found it. Back then we had a breakfast bar. It was an all-you-can-eat breakfast bar. It was a self-serve breakfast bar. And that meant that we had jelly in 10-pound cans. And we would open those cans up and set the jelly out on the bar for people to put jelly on their biscuits or on their toast or whatever they made. Now, these were expensive back then. They were $6.80. And I remember this number very well. $6.80 for a 10-pound can of jelly, grape jelly. Well, one week there was a 1 in front of the 6 to make it $16. And I'm like, no, this isn't right. It's been $6.20 or $6.80 for a long time. It could not have gone to 16. Let me see the Sugar Foods invoice. And Sugar Foods was the distributor that brought us our food every week. So I'm looking at the invoice going, oh, right there it says $6.80. So why is there a $16.80? So it got me to thinking, all right, he is taking the inventory count sending the office the $6.80 per can cost, but acting like on his inventory it's $16. So if you get in a case, that's $60 he's padding the inventory. Padding the inventory is not a good thing. That means you have a food cost problem and you're too lazy to figure it out. So you just tell your boss, hey, everything's hunky-dory. I turned him in. Remember, I had connections in the home office. I had a reputation. I was not going to have my numbers be changed by this guy to make us look like we deserved a bonus when we didn't. So I let the auditing department know, the accounting department, to send their auditor down, let them know that we got a problem. I won't tell you guys what it is. I'll let y'all find out on your own. So they came down and they audited the restaurant. And they found enough problems that they removed him from the restaurant that day. Told him he was suspended pending investigation. And then they brought in another manager to run the restaurant, and they asked me to go to a different restaurant. They wanted to completely remove the entire management team. The other dude was the one in trouble, wasn't me, but they wanted to make sure of what was going on. So in one day, they completely changed the management team. They sent me back to Ashland, Kentucky, which was fine with me because that's where I lived. Wasn't quite as far as a drive going over to Ironton as it was to go into Ashland. And then from Ashland, I was there about 2 weeks, and they sent me to Pea Ridge and gave me my own store. So I was not the least bit in trouble. The other dude, however, he was terminated about 2 days later. Not only did they find a number of issues with the inventory, they also found a number of issues with cash. That was something I didn't know about because all I knew is my deposits were going to the bank and my deposits were correct. I had no idea on what his deposits were because I had no reason to know that. So he was terminated. So the point of this little story is you got to understand your numbers. You got to understand how they all work together. It's not a 3 times cost nonsense. It's not a 50% food and labor, because that just doesn't work anymore. You got to understand how all the numbers pertain to you and your business in your area. It's not something that you can ask on a Facebook group and get an answer that's going to work 100% everywhere across the world. It'll work in a lot of places, but it may not be yours. So that's why I'm really, really big on you got to understand your food cost. You got to understand your labor cost. You got to understand all those fixed costs and then all the variable costs and how they impact your business. You guys know that I can't stand when someone says 3 times cost. Now, since I've been doing this on Facebook, we had started to see a change. And then here in the last 6-7 months, it's flipped back around. People are saying 3 times cost as if that is the gospel truth, and it's not. There is no restaurant running a 33% food cost right now that is analogous to what we are. And we are a quick service restaurant. As much as food truck owners want to say people wait on good food, while that's true, they still expect it to be quick. They aren't calling you up to say, hey, I want some ribs. When can I come get them? They're showing up wanting ribs, which means you're cooking ahead. Don't tell me that good food is worth waiting on. People want to be fed now when they're hungry. So you have to understand your numbers, your food cost. Again, what makes me so angry when somebody says 3 times cost is it doesn't account for everything. But what it does do is it forces you to have a higher break-even point. That means you have to wait on more people every day just to break even because some nut told you and you believed them that 33% food cost is what the industry does. It does not. So I've worked at a number of different restaurants. So let's go through the history of food cost. Worked for Rax Restaurants from 1977 to 1989, so a little over 12 years. Food cost started out at 32%. It was 32 flat for a number of years. Then as minimum wage went up in the early 80s, food costs started to go down. By the time that I left Rax Restaurants, 12 years later, the goal food cost was just under 31%. That was the goal food cost. As soon as I left Rax Restaurants, I started working for Wendy's. I worked for 2 different Wendy's franchises, one in Central Florida and one in the Virgin Islands. The one in Central Florida, our food cost there was a 30% to 30.5, depending upon what type of store you had. From Central Florida, I go to the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands had a whole different price structure, but our food cost there, 30%. So this is in the mid-90s. I go to Shoney's after I left Wendy's. Food cost there at a sit-down restaurant with that all-you-can-eat breakfast bar. We had an all-you-can-eat seafood bar. We had an all-you-can-eat Italian bar. And we had all-you-can-eat crab legs on Mondays and Tuesday nights. Our food cost with all of those all-you-can-eat things, 32%. Still not the 33% that people are saying, yeah, that's what they do. Truth and profit, people. First thing about truth and profit is understanding your numbers. So let's keep going with the historical food cost. From Shoney's, I went to Hardee's, 30%. From Hardee's, I went to Burger King. Burger King was 28 to 29, depending upon which store I was in and what its theoretical was. I got so good at running numbers at Burger King, the last 13 months I was there, I ran month over month lower food costs. And it was under the budget every single month, 13 months in a row. From Burger King, I go to Whataburger, 25%. From Whataburger, I go to McDonald's. I spent 6 months at McDonald's and hated every second of it. Their food costs at the McDonald's I worked at was 28%. I go from McDonald's, I go to Quiznos. The food cost at Quiznos was 29%. Slotsky's Deli was the last place that I did food cost there. At a chain restaurant, the last chain that I worked for, the theoretical food cost was 27%. My restaurant, we set it up to be 28%. Food cart, 25%. Food trailer, 24 to 25%. The boat that we did in St. Thomas, that was a laughable 20% because we had a lot more going on than just food. The point of this, truth and profit, you got to understand your own numbers. If you don't understand your own numbers, there's no truth in your profit. You're just lying to yourself. You're just crossing your fingers and hoping you're making enough money to pay the bills next month. There are so many food truck owners right now today that are buying food today, hoping that they sell enough of it tomorrow to buy more food and pay a bill that's due tomorrow, or might even be due today. If you don't understand your own numbers, you're not going to have a successful business. At best, you got a hobby. The reason I give all the classes, the reason I spend so much time trying to teach you guys how to do this business is I want you to be successful. But I was taught by other people. I'm trying to teach you guys. There's so much noise out there about the people that think they know it all, and they don't give you a complete picture. So the tip, truth and profit. You can't lie to yourself. You can't think that 3 times cost is going to make you money, because it's not going to. You will not make money with a 33% food cost. And why can I say that? Because you won't run 33%. 33% would be perfection if you do 3 times cost. You haven't accounted for waste. You haven't accounted for things you're going to burn or drop or mismake or go, oh crap. Somebody comes back with something that's cold, or somebody comes back with something that's got the wrong condiments on it. You have to totally remake the sandwich or remake the product. You cut into something like today, we cut into an onion that from the exterior looked like a nice healthy onion. We cut into it and it was rotten from the inside out. Now can you imagine if you had a whole bag like that and you couldn't take them back? Or if you only have one out of that bag, you've lost something. So you can't run whatever your perfection is on your food cost. So don't start with 33%. Because again, 33% food cost forces you to have a higher break-even point. A higher break-even point means you need to market to more people to be able to achieve that break-even point. So the truth and profit comes down to you got to understand your own numbers. And if you don't, now's the time to start getting into the classes that I give. Because if you don't understand them now, you're not going to understand them next year. Thank you so much for listening to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. If you're finding all the information helpful to your food truck business, please become a monthly supporter of the podcast. Just hit the support button or follow the link in the description. Every little bit does help keep us going. Join our Facebook group. It's called Food Truck Training. We have a whole bunch of awesome members at all different levels, from brand new beginners to decades-old veterans. They've all got your back when it comes to helping you with your food truck. And again, thank you for listening. Come back tomorrow, because you know I got plenty more to say when it comes to helping you and your food truck business grow.